Hey everyone, so we're gonna go into the second part. I'm gonna do a little editing, so I don't know how long it's gonna be. I might edit out some of the questions, we'll see, but we're gonna go into the second part of the Super Soldier talk with Tony, and let me know your feedback and who you'd like to hear me interview. Please drop below in the comments, and we will go from there. So thank you very much. Like and subscribe.
Here's this but the background behind me. They actually went and abducted sculptors from Europe, famous sculptors from the 80s and the 90s, and to come in and make those horses out of two columns. I had walked this walkway from the hangar bay to the trade window up through those revolving doors there because there was less oxygen in the hangar bay than there was when you got into the colony. So when you walk through those revolving doors, the first few breaths were really satisfying. They were very rich in oxygen. And so we did that on purpose. We'd walk for a couple miles to get here and get there. And the whole time I was there, these were two giant natural columns, and they were sculpting them into horses before I left. I was very sad that I didn't get to see them completed. And I knew I wasn't going to because the progress was so slow. But on their money, there were scenes from the 1600 war, the 30-year war in the 1600s, the 30-year war. And they believed that the Deutsch people of the 30-year war were the first culture of humans on the earth to defeat an extraterrestrial presence and win their freedom. And so they were very, very proud of it. And their motto was, we did it with horses. So they fought extraterrestrials that had high-tech stuff, and their motto is, we won with horses. So their horse was everywhere. And the old German eagle was everywhere too. This is another indigenous species that lived there. And I have a hard time with names. I still don't remember a lot of the names, the streets and things, but they had elongated skulls. They always had straight hair, but all different colors. They had big eyes, and they had strange proportions of arms. Their elbows were kind of higher up their arm than ours were, and they tended to be technicians. That's what they did for a living. But they were another indigenous species. There were thousands of them that had permanent residence on Ceres Colony. This was so in the Alhana Mons, they referred to it, the radial handle was Pyramid Base. They're inside one of the cold trap, a crater. There's a crater right next to Alhana Mons, and inside that crater, there are several small craters that had cold traps, basically walls of them inside the crater that never had sunlight or only had sunlight once in a great while shine on them. And these giant doors were there and built by an extraterrestrial species. They'd found this door system there, and when they closed it, it had a hologram that would hide it. When you see these doors, there were regularly flying ships in that were 2,000 and 3,000 feet wide and 2,000 feet tall. These doors are absolutely massive. They were in the side, and it went to a hangar bay complex that was something like 14 or 15 miles big, worth of stalls that they could park giant craft in and have them operated on. They did interstellar trade missions all over the galaxy. It was my understanding that any star that you could see at night from the Earth was already the same price. So there was nothing worth trading. So any star that you can see from your backyard, it's just like in the United States, everything is pretty much the same price, dollar amount. To really buy goods for cheap, you got to go to China for the cheap labor, or Taiwan or somewhere, and you can buy necklaces for pennies and then go back to the United States and sell them. It was the same thing, but in order to do that, they had to go much farther than any star we could see. So very far away. And there were, in fact, methods of going to other galaxies and coming back in the same day. There were portals, and the Einstein-Rosen bridge method of space travel was very real, and that's what they relied on. So there's Alhana Mons. They refer to it as Pyramid Base. It's a cryovolcano, but I think I don't know, it was classified what was in there really, but that was one of these craters down in the bottom there was where those doors were located. And that was the entrance to the military hangar bay. This is something that I can't really show, but I remembered flying over the El Khadr crater, our flight path, and then when I looked back, when I got this map from the Dawn probe, I think this was like 2017, NASA released this map from the Dawn probe that was there. Before that, in 2015, I went on record talking about seeing the geyser, and that the white spots in the Al-Qadr crater are salt deposits. The early findings of the Dawn probe and the speculation of NASA is that it wasn't salt, that it was a cocktail of other chemicals that was there, and it likely was like comet chemistry. And I said, no, it's salt. And Dr. Sala was adamant and said, are you sure? I said, it's salt with slight amounts of magnesium. I flew over it. There's a geyser there that goes off randomly every 6 to 9 years. And it goes up about 10 kilometers in the air. I remember flying over it and seeing it. And the water evaporates, and salt, sea salt basically, and magnesium snows back down and leaves those deposits. They're meters thick. Anyhow, so I look back and I remembered, I zoomed in on the crater and I thought, well, I remember flying in this direction. And lo and behold, you can't see over here on my screen, but it goes straight. That's the route we would have took to go back to the base, the entrance to the base. The Al-Hana Mons is right at the end of that arrow there. This is, I just kind of drew it. It wasn't that big. The crater is like 54 miles in wide, and the geyser was about 10 kilometers tall, so 6 miles tall. So not that big, but that's basically it. One thing, I don't know if I have this in here. There it is. It was confirmed in August 10th of 2020 on NASA. The Jet Propulsion came out and said it is in fact salt. It was a huge confirmation for me. I felt like I won the lotto. When I saw this, I woke up that morning to 20 messages of people saying, look, they found salt. You were right. You were right all along. 4 years after the fact, 5 years after I said it. And I just felt like I won the lotto. I jumped up and down for joy that day, and I went to work, and I was the only guy that knew it, what I did. It was just a big moment for me. This might be small to you guys, but trust me, when you go public with something like this, anything like this that can validate you, especially in space, it was just huge. It was a big moment for me. So that's kind of thereabouts where the entrance is. We did regular missions to Diego Garcia, and since then, so this again, I went on the record in 2015. Since then, many other whistleblowers have come forward and saying that Diego Garcia is in fact a spaceport. I said in one of my YouTube videos back in 2017 that we went there and we did missions. That was the area that I remember we would pick up cargo in the middle of the night, and we were told that the base was locked down under a curfew so that people couldn't see our craft. We were in a spaceship that landed, and the ship was about 1,000 feet long by 600 feet wide and 400 feet tall. And we would land and take on cargo. There were times I set foot there. I took the elevator down and I set foot on that parking lot in the hot night and signed papers for cargo from U.S. airmen who were fully aware of the space program that I belonged to. There was somebody that commented on one of my YouTubes that said that bullshit, I was in Diego Garcia. That never happened. They never gave us a curfew. And a year later, sure enough, an article came out and said that very often in the middle of the night, from midnight until 4 a.m, people were locked down and were not allowed to leave their living quarters. So he was lying, and I found proof that to the opposite, to the otherwise, and it corroborates. And since then, recently, I mean, there's been a lot of happenings, and Diego Garcia is now under jurisdiction of the Space Force, and it is in fact a Space Force base and classified as a space port as of last year. So there's a lot going on there. There it is. I think I have an artist rendition. One time we were waiting on cargo. We had like a couple-hour wait, so we went over to a place called Turtle Cove, and the ship parked about like that. That's just an artist rendition, a real quickie rendition of what it was, and it's to scale. So I wanted to make sure that the ship would fit at what I remember, but that's called Turtle Cove or Turtle Bay. And I remember that little outlet of water, but they let us drop a cargo net into the ship was hard capped at 30 feet above any surface. It wouldn't go on. You could not land the ship. The computer wouldn't let you land it. It won't touch the ground or the sea unless it's going underwater. There's a mode it could go underwater. But so it was always 30 feet above any surface. And we would drop a cargo net. And when we had layovers, we could go swimming. They'd let us go out the rear cargo bay and go swimming. But I was a cargo engineer. At the end of my career, I was promoted. I was in charge of 2 cargo bays on this ship, and I basically input data for the cargo and generated a stacking report for the guys to stack up down in the cargo bays. And that was a pretty cushy job, really, compared to what other things I had done. was one of my early renditions. The ship had a big, like a tower in the middle of it that they installed. I don't know what its purpose was. And in fact, the front end of the ship was classified to me. I never set foot in most of it in the front. I was allowed to go to mission briefings in the briefing room in the front. I rode the elevator to the briefings in the morning, and then I took a hallway all the way across the top deck, the A deck, to the back, and I took a fast ladder down, and I lived in the cargo bay area, and it was pretty huge. This is an artist rendition, Mark. This is what the C deck was, the main deck. We had observation windows like that. And they could turn them on and off. The whole wall would go, would match the rest of the walls and turn gray when they wanted. And those observation windows, those big porthole windows, would do the same thing. They could turn them on and off. We had a food replicator and a head right there. We came up to use the bathroom. That's where I got lunch every day. And it was mandatory to get lunch. You couldn't not eat. They'd send you to the doctor if you skipped your lunch. And it was a food replicator. We had like 7 choices of meals, little bowls you'd put in there with a lid on and press the button, and it would print the food: macaroni and cheese, pot roast, sauerkraut. There was a mashed potato and Salisbury steak thing. It was always slimy. It was a low quality. It was like crappy TV dinner kind of quality food. Here's my fast ladder. What's interesting about this is that the middle ladder, or the one after the center of the ship, the ladder just behind center towards the back of the ship, had a gravity distortion halfway down. So I would, in the morning, I had my coffee and I had a little clipboard and my report of what we were going to do for the day. And I would walk, instead of taking the ladder that I should have took, I would take this one because it had a gravity distortion. And I would climb down 1 or 2 decks and then let go off of the ladder in 1G and fall into where there was about 60% less gravity and catch myself on the ladder. And it was just the funnest thing. And I got in trouble for it, but I still kept doing it. There were times when I would drop my clipboard and the guys on the bottom deck would get mad at me. Hey, pick up your mess. And they'd yell up at me. But that was about some of the most fun I had on that ship. That was my station. I didn't finish this drawing, but it was like a steel plate. That thing killed my feet. I had thin shoes, and just standing for hours inputting data into this. And it had a little printer. It would print out the stacking report, and I had a clipboard that I would keep it on, and I would get measurements from the guys, another report, and I would just input data. That was really my whole job. And I would do 200, 300, 600 cargo containers a day worth of boxes of length, width, and height, and how much it weighed, and it would stack out a report. These were guys on the bridge. There were like 20 people on the bridge. There was a main screen like Star Trek. The captain sat and looked at it, but these guys had flat screen, curved screens that had nothing on them. Like they could see what was on the screen through these goggles, but nobody else could see what they were looking at. And the captain could see individually what they were looking at, and he would put it up on the main viewer as he wanted. So but that's basically what the crew on the bridge was looking at. I'm toward the end. This is a long story. I was visited this is my house on Maui. I lived on Maui for 9 years. And I was visited by an ET when I went public, and he asked me what was my intention of going public. And I said it was wrong what they did to me, and it's wrong what they did to her, and I'm gonna let people know. And a couple days later, a mushroom circle, right where I perceived him to be, because in that window on the left is my bedroom, and I was woke up in the morning and had a like I perceived him to be standing there, and we had a communication. It was an ET. And sure enough, a couple of days, that's why I didn't mow the lawn for a long time. A couple of days later, this mushroom circle popped up. And so also this picture time-stamped it, and it was in 2015. The program I was taken from was ran by humans from Earth and sold off to humans that live in space from Earth, but they colonized in the solar system. These are human-based programs. They have the same level of technology, slightly better than us, greatly better than us, but slightly, but mostly cornerstoned around gravity manipulation. That's really the huge advancement, is access to exotic elements that allow them to manipulate gravity. So anti-grav craft, and that's the beginning. Anti-grav is also the keystone to time travel. So you can bend space-time with anti-grav, and then it opens up time travel, opens up temporal communication. They can send texts to themselves in the future and in the past, and that's all with anti-grav tech. So the human-based programs take people. They have a lot of common denominators. people that are taken. These are career return programs, 20 and back programs. These are people that are taken for genetic experiments and frankly, breeding experiments and military experiments, military service. The second one is local group contact. So we could call this the Orion group, the reptiles, the grays, the tall whites. So these are local group contact. I call it the Draco group or the Orion group. And these tend to be very nefarious. People that have contact in this manner have abuse as a common denominator, great levels of abuse. These ET groups don't have a lot of respect for our human rights, and they see us as lower life forms, and we're treated like as such as cattle. And I believe that the program that I ended up with was in cahoots with them. So the Germans were working under them, and so it had basically that type of a command structure. The third category is everyone else. So we are conditioned to think that to get it, once you have space travel, it's very hard. It'll take you a very long time to get from Star Trek or Star Wars. It'll take you a long time to get to the other side of the galaxy, that there's life out there, but it's few and far between. That's not the case. They are all connected. We were able to go to many places in the galaxy and come home in the same day. We were able to go to a dozen or so other galaxies nearby and visit many places there out of 1 trillion stars in those galaxies and come home at the same time in the day. We would be home in time for dinner after traveling to many different places, to an almost an infinite combination of intelligent species. They're everywhere. Like 7 out of 10 stars has an Earth around it. It was the amount of life that we were aware of, and they were all available to trade. Trading information for technology or goods for technology was our mandate. It was not to seek out new life and new civilizations. It was to acquire technology, period, by any means necessary. That was the mission of all the ships that I was on. And we did. We were successful in many times. And anyhow, so that being said, everyone else it could be infinite number of technologies or intelligent species that come through and have contact with us. And that's why it looks like gibberish, because they can come through and not have anything to do with anybody else in our entire galaxy. You can be somebody from another galaxy, trillions of light years away, and they can come and interact with people on the Earth for whatever reason, for their own agenda, and at a different level of technology. So they can come down, they can interact astrally. There have been many people I've spoken to that had a ship land in their house, and people were standing, they were in their living room simultaneously in the ship's bridge, talking to the people on the craft. And then it would interact for whatever reason, and they would fly away. So these are very advanced technologies, far more advanced than the human-based programs or the local group programs. And so as a researcher, if you contact these people and you get hear their story, it doesn't line up with other contactees, and it makes ufology look like gibberish. But the fact is, we're just contacted by that broad of a spectrum of what's out there, and that happens quite often. And I found that it's also local to the Earth. Like, it tends to not happen as much in the United States. Other parts of the world have contact from other programs. Let me get to this question. Your book, Memories Trigger, awesome presentation. Thanks, Chris. I think that's it. So, I mean, this is a Hubble deep field. These are all galaxies with upwards of 1 trillion stars or so, for half a trillion stars in each one, certainly. And we can access these. The Germans on Ceres Colony could access these and come home by 4 o'clock in the same day. So that's the scope. And then when you think about these stars, all those trillions and trillions of stars, 7 out of 10 of them has an Earth or a civilization around it. So when you think of the scope of that, that's the reality of space travel. I really think it's a disservice for people to group all of our ET contacted as they're Pleiadians or Andromedans or Lyrans or nearby stars, because that's not the case. We are being contacted from all of those people too, and it's a very widespread, it's a very infinite situation. And so people need to get their head around that fact, because ufology is limited by people treating it like it's a neighborhood up there, that it's only a certain few, and that all of those stars are too far away to get to. And that's just not the case. The technology is as such that they can jump very far. Nancy, do people fight back against it? Not really. The mind control was very effective. We had shock collars, and we were under the threat of death very often. They could shock us. I was programmed to, once I had an electrical shock, to stop whatever I was doing and await command, and it was extremely effective. Mind control is extremely effective. If you paid attention to the last election we had, mind control is very effective, and it was very slight through the media. When you talk about industrial strength mind control with trauma-based indoctrination and drugs, you can think about how incredibly effective it was. And the labor force was under a great amount of mind control. We are currently under a great amount of mind control. When you look at your phone, when it's anything you see for free means that you are the product. I was in school with the rich kid life when you came back. He knew. He asked me how I was, and he was concerned, and his attitude towards me changed. He knew exactly what happened. And I believe he had gone through it too. That's why he was so smart on his tests, because he was able to go and retain his memories. When I got back, I didn't remember what had happened. And there I was. That was me at 10. That was that Saturday. We had a big rainstorm, and that was my long driveway got destroyed from all the rain. And my dad went out and took pictures of me. But that was then. I was a 10-year-old boy. I went right back to being that. I'm going to stop the share. Any questions?
I do. I have one, Tony. It's Dr. Kim. Today, James Rink interviewed a guy. I think he was at the 5D conference when he was, because it looked like James was in a hotel room. And I can't remember this guy's name, but maybe you know. But I couldn't even watch the interview because his trauma was so front and center, and his pain and his alters were so up. Like, it was painful to watch. Like, he was so still processing or not processing his trauma. How come you are just like, I mean, look at you now. Like, you are not the picture of trauma. You know what I'm saying? I think that's really important for us to, if you could help us understand that difference. Like, I could sit through this presentation and I didn't feel all that horribly, you know, angst and heaviness and twisty darkness that was coming off this guy. So what's the difference there?
Well, it was a long time ago for me. I always had the memory. So it's a very small, so I did psychic service in the beginning. The program I was in the beginning, I think, is what lent me to get my memories back. And it was a long time ago. We're talking over, 39 years ago. And when I was in my 20s and all the way till I was 30, I had a great deal of problems, huge emotional problems. When I got back, I remember I was in the top 5% of the school. I had 140 IQ. I had the highest average of SAT scores in the history of my school. I was a very smart kid. When I got back, I completely withdrew. I went to D's and E's, and I eventually dropped out of high school. And I was homeless when I was 17. I had breathtaking emotional problems, not a relationship to be had. I couldn't pay a girl to be with me because I was a basket case. All of a sudden, when I was 30, I woke up one day in my bed and I said, it's over. And I felt like $1 million. And I said, it's over. I don't know why. I kept saying it over to it's over, it's over. And I met my wife a few months later and stayed with her. And I could make relationships work. I cleaned my room. I got my career together. I started earning more money. It was like I was broken in two and lived my life those 20 years as not a stable person. I was broken into as half. And when it was over, when the other person died, I was reintegrated and went back to being myself, more of myself.
Interesting.
The damage was done. I coped with it for a long time. The other thing is I had things like claustrophobia, PTSD. When I got my memories back, the actual integration and the big recall thing in 2015, I was able to say, that's why I'm claustrophobic. I remember being trapped in a small thing. I remember being trapped several times while I was out there, and that's why I'm claustrophobic. And when I was able to identify the problems like that, they just dissipated. And so don't get me wrong, I was editing my book today and teared up. So the book was extremely, talking about it, we're coming up on 300 episodes of me talking about this in this kind of format of an interview.
Sure.
hundreds of hours. And so talking about it wasn't easy in the beginning. You watch my first interview, it was very hard, tongue tied. But now I can speak about it. But writing it down puts it into a whole new reality. And it was very painful. There were times when I was I couldn't write my book. I had somebody else write it for me. I did
Mhm.
recordings, because when I wrote it down physically or typed it, I moped around depressed for weeks, for
Wow.
literally weeks, like called into work when I had to relive it. You know what I mean? So that damage is still there. I'm just comfortable with speaking about it. I feel like I didn't want to be on my deathbed and go, man, I should have told somebody all the things. It was just too much to
Right.
remember. I had so many memories, I just didn't want to. So, um, how do memories? This is a great question. Well, Diana, so the short answer is no. I haven't been taken back. I've had some weird things happen since I've gone public, but I would be a fool to believe that I'm just lucky and nothing bad's happened to me without some kind of help from somebody else. So, but no, I haven't been taken. How do memories typically start for folks? This is a great question, Nancy. Usually in the dream state, usually in the dreams right before you wake up in the morning, when you're in your really deep dream state, people get memories. The difference between a dream and a memory, though, is when you're dreaming, you're on the beach and you become lucid. You can ask yourself, how did I get here? And you don't know, because you did not get there. You began dreaming and you become lucid. Then you can go somewhere else. It doesn't go from the beach to the parking lot, of the beach to the car to the restaurant. The dream goes straight to from the beach to a restaurant to a wherever. When you're remembering memories in a dream state and you go, how did I get here? Those memories become available. And that's the difference. And most people know the difference that I work with. And it's like, man, I keep having a reoccurring dream. I go, do you remember? Go into the dream, empower yourself, and ask yourself how you got there. Do you know that? And it happens. So there's a disturbing trend where a lot of people are being told that they were a super soldier, told by some kind of hypnosis or somebody, a psychic, you were a super soldier, and what they have no memories of. And people are basing it and running with it. And I feel that's dangerous. I feel you have to have your own memories in order to explore. So, but typically it starts in dreams, in that dream state right before you wake up, the really high focus state. And then people get waking dreams and keystone dreams. And unfortunately, a lot of people go straight into space in these programs, and they don't do have. So what happened to me is I'm able to find places on Earth that really put a stamp on it. I was able to find the house in Seattle. I was able to find the town of Peru. And oh my God, I know my way around these places. What? And that inspired me to go find help and talk about it. But a lot of people don't have that ability. They were taken to other planets. They don't even know that most of the cities are underground. And so they don't have a tangible dreams that they stumble across. So it's a different perspective for a lot of people. But a memory is a memory, and if you really go in and dwell on it, you can remember more. That's the difference between a dream and a memory. You have to go through some sort of deprogramming healing when you got back. There was a long process. It was a long process of the return when they put me back in as myself, and it's in the book. I would like to explain, Stacy, more of that, but I would just say it's in the book, The Return. There was a lot that happened there, and there was a permanent record of my service, that there was things that happened, and they were going to, they knew that I was going to remember. In the surgical procedures, they had what was called chronovisor technology, which is probable futures. They couldn't look into the future specifically, but it had probable futures, and they had to get the probability of me remembering down below a certain threshold, and they never did. They were going to operate on me and put me back after a lobotomy. I was going to wake up the next day, brain, as a vegetable, like something bad happened. And when I got there was no record of me. My records have been deleted by my captain on my ship. And so they said, there's no record. He can't, it doesn't matter if he has his memories or not. There's no record. So just send him back. And that's what happened. So I didn't, OBS. So in the beginning, what really triggered my memory. So I always had the memories my whole life. I had, especially the geyser, flying over the geyser. And it was, like I said, I remembered showering that morning. You know what I mean? I remember flying over the geyser, talking to a German officer, talking about the salt and the geyser. Look, it's a beautiful sight. And I thought, when could I have done that? I have chronological memory of my life here in Michigan. When was I gone for years to learn another profession and be on a spaceship. When that doesn't make any sense. I have these memories of one past life or dream, whatever. It must be BS. When Randy Kramer explained how they take people in a temporal time, in a quantum time dilation, quantum superfluid consciousness in a quantum time dilation, big words, basically a 20-year tour. When he explained that and they could put you right back, I went, oh my God, that's what they did to me. And all the memories came. Then they all made sense because I wasn't fighting it or blowing them off anymore. I accepted them, and I always had a lot of the memories, especially the abuse in Seattle. A lot of the sexual abuse, I couldn't figure out what the hell that was. And when I got it together, it all came back together. So that was the trigger. I think finding out that this tech exists and giving it the benefit of the doubt that this technology exists is really what triggers a lot of people that have been through similar things. Would you forget my memories if I could, Nancy? That's another great question. I've been asked that before, and the answer is no. And here's why. I am changed. So the trauma that I went through enabled me to be the person I am. And if I were to get rid of that trauma, what I am would die as well, and I would be a completely different person. So I can't say that I would be happy or sad if I forgot my memories. I really don't. I really honestly don't know. So I wouldn't want to take that chance, and I would not forget my memories. It was very therapeutic for me to remember what I went through. Accessing the memories gave me closure on much of it. So it was very therapeutic. It was the cure for a lot of the problems that it caused. So I think remembering, and there are people, it's individual. There are people that I've worked with that kind of come up against the wall, and I say, look, man, this is up to you. I can't tell you that one way or the other. I feel that you should work to remember, but if you feel that you don't, your higher self knows better than anybody. And some people don't want to remember. There were people up there that said, I don't want to remember any of this when I go back. And when I was up there, I did. I wanted to remember. Gary Peacock, what is a super soldier? So these are people that are taken into these programs and greatly modified to do things that a normal person cannot. They're greatly modified and much tougher and much more resilient in a combat situation than a normal person. The military has been experimenting with these, and there are many versions of a soldier that we would call super. How can you tell if it's real or a false memory? You really can't. The only thing that I would say is that a false memory wouldn't be that detailed. So my defense against false memories are my accuracy of things that have panned out and the amount of memories. And for what reason? Like if they put a false memory in there, why? What is the end game on that? That's the first thing that I would think about with a false memory. If I suspected false memory, what is the end game here? What are you remembering? What does it cause you to do? What does it cause you not to do? And why would they do that? And false memories, I've found, and I don't want to speak too much on this. I don't want to go on record with this, but what I found is that false memories are not that long, that they're not very involved. So typically people have false memories, have short false memories. Wife in the programs, or how did you induce this information there? She didn't believe in ETs. When I went through this in 2015, I woke up and I'm sitting there and I'm going, oh my God. And then I had an ET visit me at my house and leave a mushroom circle. He was of the mind that if ETs were real, they'd be in the Bible. And she does not believe in it. She does not support any of this. She doesn't want me to go. I'm going to the 5D events next week. I'll be speaking there. And she is not behind it whatsoever. So it's kind of a rift for us. And it's alienated me from her family as well. So I've been completely honest with my kids and everybody in my life about it. And anybody that asks me, I speak openly about all of it. And that's how I feel. And I don't force it on anybody. I feel like in order for somebody that doesn't believe in any of this, for me to go in and force it upon them and prove it, beat them over the head with my proof, causes them, in order to accept it, you have to unbelieve something. And I feel that that's like stealing from somebody. So it's something that I will ask anybody that asks me about the information, I'll give it to them freely, but I don't force it on anybody. It's everybody's right. You have to be curious, and it's everybody's right to be ignorant. Anybody else?
Okay, you guys, this is your chance. Usually he has like 300 people at him.
Oh, it's okay.
At least when James talks to him. So this is your chance to any final questions. It sounds like there's going to be a lot of information in the book. Sounds like you already have a lot of information out on your Patreon. And there are, if you just type in his name, you can catch up, you know, almost back, I think, from the beginning. I've seen some really old interviews with you. So there's a lot.
On
He's
my
kind of like
website,
me.
yeah.
He's out there. Just type in his name. And I know they've taken some stuff down too.
You can quite a
YouTube
bit.
and
You can
different
also
places.
contact me through my website. You can email me directly through my website. If you guys think of
Awesome.
any questions,
Thank you. That's okay. So a few more questions. So that worked or didn't worked against you.
Stacy, a good question. This is a prison planet. Obviously, some of us are allowed to leave, and most of us are not. So that's the definition of prison. In that regard, I feel like all of ET experiences, all of them, if ET experiences were legitimate, they would knock at your front door. Everybody gets taken from their car or their bedroom. It's a definite definition. We have a agreed rule set amongst all of us, and it's one of our highest crimes to take children from their house. It's literally our highest crime. And so ETs and all these programs that are interacting with us and coming into our bedroom and taking us in the night are felons. They're committing a felony. It's nothing less than a crime. I don't care. Some people, I've talked to people that had blessings from it, that it was a positive experience, but I don't care. They committed a felony. If they want to bless me, they can knock on my front door like the entire society has agreed to do. So we are in a prison planet, absolutely, because we have no rights when it comes to these that we are being taken advantage of, absolutely. Have you ever recalled memories from beyond this lifetime? Yes. And so during those times, those flights in Peru, when I was out, when I was under, I did access, I don't know how to put it in words, but I did access other things, between life memories, put it that way. Memories from between life. I was put out of my body. Other intelligence were talking through me. And in that time I was in between, and I could access basically why I was here and where I came from, what the previous lives were. And people do incarnate several times on a planet, but not necessarily. You don't, just because you're here incarnated, you can die and go to another planet very far away and live your next life there. And your last life can be from somewhere very, very, very far away. And people always, the astrologers always like, you are a Pleiadian. And I'm thinking, you know what? You don't know where I came from, because it could be very much farther away than astrology knows about. So it's a big nature. Nature extends beyond the sky, and it's very big, and it's much bigger than we talk about, really. So I'm all set. Do I do myself to protect myself from them at night? I really don't, Nancy. I just quit being afraid of it. There was a time when right before I was going to speak publicly for the first time, and I was scared. What do I do? What do I do? And I thought, I'm not going to live my life afraid of it. Whatever happens, happens. I'm going to do what I feel is right, and whatever is the consequence isn't up to me. Whatever I'm afraid of isn't up to me. And that's been the best policy so far. And then talking about it publicly, like, you got to think, if I choke on a chicken bone, the people will talk, and it will just look like I was a martyr. So they leave you alone. It's kind of late for them to shut me up at this point. How does nature and the push for new tech interweave? Well, technology is nature. So our intelligence enables us to build tools and technology to make our lives easier. And that is part of nature as well. So the push for technology is part of nature. There's no divorce there. So it looks like we consume nature, that we're this poison thing, but really we're just transforming nature into our version of it. We're not killing nature, we're transforming it into a new form of nature. So I don't think that intelligent species like mankind, we're evil and our existence is some kind of poison like they'd have us believe. I think that's BS. I think we have every bit as much right to be here and be in control of nature as we are. And we do, even though it looks like we're killing the planet, we are not. We are transforming the planet into our home. And so, everybody can debate me. I'm sure I can make people ruffle feathers by saying that stuff, but I'm an optimist, and I feel like it's not the end of I'm not choosing to feel guilty for my existence as a human. So, and I don't think we should. I think humans are my best bet. Stacy, were you able to distinguish between clones and others when you were gone? So we were called clones, we were called slaves, and we were a lower part of society on Ceres Colony. And I had a slave collar that I wore and a jumpsuit, and I did not like to go into public places for that reason, because it was absolutely humiliating. If you think about being in a grocery store and somebody knocks over a jar of mayonnaise and it breaks on the floor, they would go, "You slave, pick it up." And that was the amount of rights that I had in public. It was absolutely humiliating. I got humiliated often because I was clearly a slave. And this is just part of their right. You know, it's, if you go back, they were based on the Romans, the Roman Empire, the Reichs. And so that was the same thing, but they're not so much morally superior. They're technologically superior through ill-gotten means. How can we stop being memory wiped? You know, the short answer is I don't know. But what I do know is that more and more people, because we need to talk about it. Like, I tell you this, step one, talk about it. Everybody here might go hear what I said. There's this guy, Tony, who was on the show last night, that says he lived for 20 years and was in a space program for the military, and they put him back to how he was. And you might tell that to somebody that has no idea what it is, but do it, because they're going to go, "Oh, whatever, BS." But they're going to hear it that one time. You got to hear something 5 times before you accept it. And then the next time, next year, somebody else should say it from some other angle. So we have to keep talking about this. And that's how we're going to stop. The very first thing is being aware of it. We've been kept in the dark, and the secrecy is how they've gotten away with it. The secrecy is how they do this to the kids. The secrecy enables the Satanism. The secrecy enables the conspiracy to control resources, and the secrecy lets them get away with this. So the first thing we have to do is talk about it, so it's not secret anymore. That's step one. I don't know what's going to be step 2, but that's about all we got right now. So we got to run with it. What are your thoughts on Elon Musk targeting commercial trips to the moon? What's the end game? I think Elon Musk is part of the programs. I think he knows exactly what he's doing. I think he's got a neural link already in him. The Starlink system went live over the poles first, and the Germans have a base in Antarctica, and the Americans have Solar Warden base in the Arctic, in the North Pole. And that's the first place where the Starlink system went live with the 5G internet. So that leads to me to believe that he's involved, and his technology through the Teslas and everything is leaps and bounds ahead of everybody else. There's no way he could do that with just people from MIT working for him. So Elon Musk is probably in it, and what we're seeing is the public face of these programs getting ready to bring us into the fold.
Alrighty.